Welcome to NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series, where we focus on how financial advisors work, live, and give to their local communities and our greater financial services industry. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, NAIFA Nation. This is your co-host for Advisor Today's podcast, Chris Gandy, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Suzanne Carawan. Hi, Suzanne.
Hey, Chris.
So good to see you.
Good to see you.
You know, Suzanne, we've been doing this for a little bit of time now, and we're starting to get some good feedback. People are starting to actually download the podcast, pay attention. But I think we have a guest today where people will be able to take some systems and processes and some new unique ideas away from today. So, Suzanne, before we get into it, will you share with us a little bit about who is our sponsor, or what's our sponsor today for today's podcast?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So this week's sponsor is going to be, it's kind of a joint one between the Talent Development Center and the Business Performance Center, because Dan Finley is actually a member of both those and regularly contributes. So Dan Finley has been a loyal member from with NAIFA for quite a few years, and I'm happy to say I'm the one who I sold Dan. So Dan's one of my progeny there, and we'll talk about that. But he's been a long time partner to NAIFA, and we'll get into that as well as he has a brand new book out that we want to hear about. And so we wanted to have Dan come on this show because he has been a coach, etc. And we were just hitting on a couple of things. I know today we're going to hit on systems and processes, moving from individual coaching to team-based coaching and whatnot. But Dan Finley is our guest today. So we're delighted to have you on. And actually, it's taken us months to get you on because he's been busy out there coaching away. So happy to have you, and he's one of our NAIFA best.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. What a great introduction. Thank you.
So Dan, welcome to our podcast. I believe we are on episode. We're after 40. I think yeah. we're moving on up there. So Dan, happy to have you. So share with us a little bit about your relationship with NAIFA, and share with us a little bit about how you got started in the connecting to the financial services business.
Okay. Well, let me start with your first question, getting connected with NAIFA, because the latter question is a little bit longer answer, that is. So I believe I was introduced to NAIFA a long time ago, 2006. And what's interesting about that is because I had already been in the industry since 93, but I didn't really know anything about NAIFA. I was with a large regional firm, A.G. Edwards, back in the day. At any rate, I was coaching. I started coaching in 2004, but I heard about NAIFA in 2006, and I reached out to NAIFA. I think it was well before, Suzanne, you were on board.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of some light conversations a little bit at first, and it took a few years. And then at one point, I had asked if I could do a free group coaching session for NAIFA members. What was interesting about that is they said this was January, and they said maybe in October, and at any rate, how time flies. I mean, October came pretty quickly. And so when October hit, we did a free session. I can't even remember what it was about. It was so long ago. I think it might have been questions-based selling or spin selling, how to ask better questions. And then afterwards, I got a phone call from the person that had set the whole thing up and was kind of co-doing that presentation. And he asked, could you want to do one every month? And so I did at that point. And I think that lasted for about 6 years until COVID hit. And then things kind of slowed down in a lot of different respects and when COVID hit. So that's how I got introduced to NAIFA. But Suzanne's right. She was the one that recruited me into being a member years ago. And so I did. I took the plunge, and I'm glad I did. So I hope that answered that first question. But as far as Chris, and Suzanne, as far as getting into the industry, getting into the business, I started in 1993, and I was 26 years old, which I never thought 30 years were going to fly by. But at any rate, it goes quick. And so I started too quick. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't even know I didn't know it. And so it's the first level of learning. It's called unconscious incompetence. You just don't even know the challenges because you're so lost.
Oh, I love that. Unconscious incompetence. Oh, I love that.
You just don't know the challenges. Yeah. And so at any rate, I got into the business in 93, and I was a registered investment advisor, but it was a nice title But the reality, Chris and Susanna, was I was a glorified cold caller, for 3 principal partners. And about a year later, I decided to move on to build my own business instead of building theirs. And so I moved on to A.G. Edwards. And I stayed there for a lot of years. But I think it was, in 2000, I moved on in 2003, I believe, and then went to a bank for a couple of years. So I literally have had the wirehouse, the independent, the wirehouse, and the bank channel. I've had that experience with all 3, different formats or, places to be. But somewhere along the way, and I think it was about year 3, the branch manager came into my office and he said, "Hey, could you teach the rookies how to cold call? And could you stay late?" And I said, "I stay late every night." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm going to order pizza. You can teach them how to cold call, what to say, how to say it." I said, "Okay." So we did it in the conference room, and I kind of got the coaching bug at that point. And then it followed me when I left Milwaukee and then moved to Minneapolis because my family's from around here. So I came back to this area, and that branch manager, I told him, I'm coaching the rookies. And he said, "We've got 6. Could you coach those guys?" And then it followed me to the bank where that manager said, "Hey, can you coach our rookies here?" But it's morphed into that coaching the rookies to, like Suzanne said, coaching teams as well. And my biggest team manages a lot of assets, $2.2 billion. So it's been a good progression. So I don't know if that answered your question, Chris, but yeah.
So that's an interesting run, right? So you go from coaching rookies to coaching teams. Playing sports in my previous life, I think that seems like it's a different skill set. Can you share with us a little bit about what is the difference between coaching an individual and coaching a collective team?
Okay. So think of it this way. If you were a pitching coach, okay, for a professional baseball team, you're going to work with these pitchers only, right? You're going to look at their form. You're going to look at how well they can throw the ball, everything, because you know everything about individually. But if you're coaching the entire team, you're watching the whole team, okay? Which is interesting about that, what I think is interesting about that, Chris, is even though I'm coaching a team, I'm also coaching the players individually as well. So what we've done is we've done a group coaching session, which is 24 weeks, and it's basically the foundation. It's the Advisor Solutions Pipeline and Sales 1.0. So it's the foundation of soft skills, of how to connect with anyone, anywhere, anytime. And then we also do a team coaching session twice a month. So the group is every week. So they get the fundamentals. That'd be like going to practice every week. Mm-hmm. And then the team is to be accountable of what did you do? How many referrals did you ask for? What kind of responses did you get? How did you get through that? Did you follow up? And I'll just use it in one example, the referrals, and then charting how they're doing every week. And that team actually received, I think that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 114 referrals in 6 months, which is huge. And they brought in 45 million in 6 months, which is huge because they weren't bringing in that kind of number. And they found 94 million in 6 months. So they were doing it because they were conscious of doing it. But I'm still working individually. So it's kind of like a 3-pronged system, working individually with people to coach them on what to say, how to say it, and that kind of thing in an individual coaching session. And we look at their pipeline. Okay, who's in the pipeline? What's the most important situation? Like, who's the most important person? I've got a meeting I want to close. So we work on that strategy of how are we going to help that person buy? Because people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So it's a process that I teach people. But also group coaching where everybody's together and we're working on exactly what to do on over these 24 weeks of how to connect better with people. I call it effortless connections. And then the third way is team coaching, which is really another word for accountability coaching. It just sounds a little bit nicer to say team coaching. So, so I hope that answered your question, Chris.
So accountability coaching. So you're coaching individuals collectively and you're coaching them as a joint and partner on a team. Okay. So there had to be a distinction for you, right? So coaching versus playing, right? And so I'm sure people ask you, hey, why don't you just be a producer? Like, just be a producer, just be a big time producer. Why spend your time, energy, and effort trying to motivate others?
That's a great question. But
so why?
Well, every client that I have, I've closed. So it's not that I'm not closing people. I am. It's just in a different kind of on the flip side of the same coin. So what happened, I'll tell you a quick story of where the conversion was. One day back in 2004, I believe it was, I closed a huge annuity, and I was pretty excited about that. And this person left, this couple left. I sat down, I had the paperwork, Chris and Suzanne had the paperwork in front of me. And instead of mailing it off, because my assistant wasn't right outside my door, I had to mail it off 12 miles away, to the headquarters or my regional headquarters. Instead of doing that, I grabbed the phone and I picked it up to call the next person. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this. It'll all come around to your question. I went to call the next person, and I realized when I looked at the computer, I don't know who I'm going to call, what I'm going to say, but I do know I want to set another appointment and have a good, another meeting. And I put the phone down and I thought, wait a minute, I'm winging it. And if there's one thing that anybody gets from this podcast, it's winging it doesn't work. In fact, I say that all the time in my podcast, winging it doesn't work. And so I went home that night and I knew this about this tool called the Life Wheel. Chris, Suzanne, have you ever heard of the Life Wheel? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. So the Life Wheel is just a pie chart that has slivers of the pie and it's different facets of your life, like fitness, friends, family, hobbies, whatever it is that's important. And then you rate yourself in each one of those facets, your finances. How are you on a scale of 1 to 10 with your finances? Like, I've got it dialed in. I know how much I have. I've got a budget and all of that stuff. What about your friendships? Are you spending enough time with friendships and so on? Family. And I knew the process, which was this wheel. And then you rate yourself from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being like the crust of the pie. And then you connect the dots and you look at that and you ask yourself, is this wheel balanced? Would you drive on this wheel if it was an actual wheel on your car, Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. At first I thought, okay, if this were the business, what is it? Is it a square? Like, there's four corners to this business. If I get these 4 things down, I'm going to take it to the next level. And then I looked at it and thought, maybe it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of triangle thing, I thought, it's that, because everything's equal. So it's equal. It's got to be a circle. And if it's a circle, what are the slivers of the pie? And I thought, time management. If I don't manage my time, everything crumbles. Prospecting. If I don't grow this business, and prospect, it's never going to grow. Sales. I can prospect all day, but if I'm not good at sales, I'm not going to close anyone. Marketing, client servicing, product knowledge, and so on. And then I rated myself in each one of those, connected the dots. And that was the beginning of all of it, Chris and Suzanne, where I looked at that and I thought, wait a minute, if I'm up like a 3 at time management, what's my problem? What are my challenges? So I start writing down the challenges. And then over time, I counted up 40 different sources, books you've all heard of, okay, I'm trying to find a solution to having structure to the day, having a way to handle interruptions, and so on. How to talk to my clients and my assistant when I get interrupted so that I don't put out the next fire and then put out the next fire and so on. And what I found was, Chris and Suzanne, I started getting better results. But then as I was coaching these rookies, I realized that over years, I got more satisfaction out of helping advisors than I did investors. And that's why I moved on. Mm-hmm. So long-winded answer to your quick question, Chris, but it really comes down to satisfaction. I got more satisfaction, still do. And I help advisors.
You're putting the playbooks together and running it. Yeah.
So I'm on the advisor side. Dan, I do coaching. I coach advisors, probably not at the level you coach them at, but recruit, train, and develop advisors. But I also produce.
Good.
I would say that coaching for me is harder because the motivation. So the question is, how do you get advisors, let's call it see the world through your rose-colored glasses. How do you get advisors to move the needle, to do the things that others aren't willing to do, to make the sacrifices?
Okay.
How do you do that without telling them what to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's
pulling it out internally, right? Get that internal drive. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a combination of two things. When I started in coaching, I went to this meeting where somebody was coaching other people. And I called her later and I said, wait a minute, but you didn't have the answers. And she said, no, coaching isn't about having the answers. It's about having the questions. And I said, well, I don't want to be a coach then, because I want to have the answers for people that need help. And that's more consulting, right?
I was just going to say, that sounds like consulting, because that's called recurring revenue.
Exactly. So this is a combination of both, because I may have the answers, and I most likely do, because I've seen it all in the last 19 years of coaching and 30 years being in the industry. So, but here's the thing. If I ask the right questions to get them to come to a conclusion that they need blank, and then I say, and here's the tool, and here is what's going to get you there, that gets them more motivated. But also, Chris, it was a great question. How do you get them to be motivated? You turn it into a game. So think of it this way. Kids love to play games, right? Kids will play games, especially if they're winning. They want to keep playing, And so what I do, first and foremost, is help them with time management to begin with, and prospecting and sales. Those three facets, I think, are paramount to help them. But I have to help them turn it into a game. So you're only going to do this game for 45 minutes. You're going to make outgoing calls for 45 minutes. There's always going to be a winner and a loser in that game, right? But you're playing against yourself. You got 45 minutes to do blank, to do this activity, make outgoing calls. So if I turn it into a game and they're accountable to tell me that they won the game or lost the game, and they rewarded themselves or they punished themselves for winning or losing, then they're more motivated because they've got awareness of what to do, okay? Action of doing it. I call it a AAA business, AAA rated business. Awareness, action, and accountability. So how do I keep them motivated? Turn it into a game until it turns into a habit. That's how.
Turn into a game until it turns into a habit.
Yep.
But do you find, like, back, and this is probably far more when you had the rookies though, I mean, the percentage of washout rate in our industry. So are you finding that people are you're either seeing it or not? Kind of like you would look at athletes, like, they either have the ability and they can learn any sport, or, or they're opting out themselves. Like, how'd you develop an eye for that?
I would say, well, a couple of things. Well, what is their why? What's their motivation to even be in the business? If it's just about money and they don't like what they do, they're going to be gone. But what we really need to do is find out, okay, so what's your why? And let's take a look and figure out where you rate on what I call the rejection spectrum. Okay. The advisor's rejection spectrum. One would be, I don't even want to pick up the phone because I'm afraid of rejection. 10 is, I'll call anyone, anywhere, anytime. I don't care, So where do they rate? Now, veterans can have kind of this learned belief system, like, yeah, but I spent 10 years building my business. I don't want to call people. I just want to talk to my clients, that kind of thing. So first and foremost, I find out, okay, where are you with rejection? And then I help them. I put together a white paper, 25 ways to conquer rejection. And then I whittled it down to 10 ways to conquer rejection and make a game out of getting rejected, and understanding and identifying rejection is not the same as an objection. An objection, not interested, like we talked about before we started, is no big deal if you know exactly what to say. So getting them motivated, Chris, your original question, is really a function of a couple of things. One, helping them understand that they can get through rejection. They can conquer rejection. Okay. It's the art of rejection perception. That's what I call it. Rejection is a learned behavior. When you were a baby, they didn't, the doctor didn't pick you up by your ankles and say, not interested, I have an advisor, and you cried. They didn't, you didn't even think that way. Somewhere along the way, when you heard it the 100th or 3,000th time, you're like, they're rejecting me personally. But it's a learned behavior. And so if you can learn that the art of rejection perception says this, they're not rejecting you personally, They're rejecting the value they think that you can bring them. So all we need to do is help increase the value that you bring them with the right questions. If you ask the right questions and they're thinking, yeah, maybe I do need help with that, then they're going to want to meet with you. So the key to what I do is all about systems. I said winging it doesn't work. The opposite of that is I know exactly what to do. I've got a system for this. That's why I wrote 2 books that are over 400 pages each, because it's all about what to do. So
yeah. Though I do think there's a little, so from my career standpoint, I have taught and educated and coached hundreds of people in marketing, like hundreds and hundreds. And I do think there is a magical moment though, and it doesn't happen for everyone. And I think this is where it keeps you going. But that person, there's a point at which you realize that this is your craft and your body of work, and it's in the game. You can get into the game between you and you, right? But there is something that has to transition. Most people have been raised to, go to their boss or their teacher, and they're just doing as told, doing as told, doing as told. When you go through that epiphany and you realize this is I think it's that career piece, that this is your business you're building, your body of work, this is your legacy, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
Getting people to that point, that is a magical thing. And I think most people that coach that love it, that's what they love. They love that. And because then the accountability really is theirs. And then there's no limits, right, of what they could do.
Right.
But I don't know that comes to everybody. If you have extra secret sauce to help me pull that in more people, because some people it just always is somebody else's fault, or there's a reason, right? The bus broke down, whatever, right? Like there's a million reasons, and it's never that.
Well, the secret sauce is in the systems. That's what it comes down to. And so if this here's the thing, in some respects, you can't coach desire. Like if this person really literally doesn't pick up the phone, then they're going to wash out on their own. It's going to happen. There was a rookie, a great kid that was in his 20s. And during COVID, I started coaching him at the beginning of 2020. And I remember his boss saying, we're going to put this guy on he's going to get a salary for 3 years. And I said, why 3 years? And he said, well, I want him to really make it. And I knew within the first probably 3 sessions, this kid is never going to make it, because you just gave him the keys to the car and he doesn't pay insurance. He's entitled.
Yeah.
So he had every excuse in the book. And back to your original question, Chris, that was, one of those people that just didn't have desire. And so if I picked up the phone right now to talk to his boss, I'm pretty confident that guy would say, nah, he left. He washed out because his 3 years are up. His salary was up after 3 years. So, yeah.
Are you actively seeking clients? Are you coaching advisors? Share with us a little bit about, if our listeners want to find you, Dan, and say, you know what, this guy can help me go to the next level.
Yeah.
1, how do they do it? 2, it has to be a win-win relationship, right? I'm sure you're looking for talent or people that are not just interested, but committed to being successful.
Yeah.
So there's certain qualities that they need to bring to the table, but share with us a little bit about that journey, what that would look like, what that would entail.
It's interesting that you asked that, because I just spoke to a NAIFA member that's been a NAIFA member for a lot of years, a couple of decades. And I'll speak to him later on today. And so the way to find me, if somebody's watching this and they want a free coaching session for 45 minutes, we'll set up a free session. That's no big deal. I mean, I'm fine with that. No obligation. Let's just talk. Let's figure out what your challenges are. What are the solutions that work for other advisors and agents, and kind of go from there. So all I have to do is email me at dan@advisorsolutionsinc.com. That's ADVISOR. Solutions is plural, inc.com. And just put "let's talk" and in the subject line, and then a little bit about your backstory, and we'll set up a time to talk. And then from that, you'll decide whether or not, or we will decide whether or not we're a good fit, and kind of go from there. And I've got different coaching programs where you can be in group only, where we meet twice a week for 2 different topics each week, Monday and Wednesday, or individually, where we're meeting twice a month and twice a week, so you've got 8 and 10 sessions, or weekly. And I tend to find that people that get into it weekly get the most results because they've got the most, skin in the game. And when you were talking about, they've got to be, Chris, when you were saying something to the effect of what you're looking for, I look for people that want to get to the next level. And I think what happens in this industry is a lot of people hit a production plateau at some point in their career. And they either decide, well, this is it. I'm comfortable. This is all, I'm good. I don't want to grow, but they won't really admit it. They're just kind of go, the next year goes by, or the next decade and so on. And then you've got the people that are like, I don't want to be on this production plateau anymore. What do I do? What's the solution? That's where I was when I had that epiphany after that couple left and I closed that annuity, that, wait a minute, what are my challenges and what are the solutions? But you don't want to reinvent the wheel at all because it'll take too long. What you want to do is learn from like-minded advisors and agents that are already learning these tools and techniques and getting transformational moments. They're getting to the next level. And what's great about that is I can have a rookie that, if I'm thinking of this guy right now, great guy, who's only been in the business for 5 years. And he was in a group session with a bunch of veteran guys. And at any rate, when we role played, he put those guys to shame. Because he was open to learning and applying everything. And he was getting results that these guys weren't, which is great. So.
Wow. So transformation, growth, upward mobility, building their practices, building their businesses. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges.
Okay.
So share with us, you didn't just arrive here. And, you got here, but you had to have challenges along the way. Can you share with us a little bit about what are some of the challenges you've had to face along the way that has kind of led you to this calling?
Okay. So the biggest challenge that I had when I sat down with that pie chart, I call it the advisor's business wheel. The biggest challenge that I saw right away when I was talking about time management. So if we break it down into different facets, different slivers of the pie, time management was structure to the day and a way to handle the interruptions. So I had a lot of clients and I was interrupted all day long. And it was to the point at one point where I had 42 items on a to-do list. And my assistant said, hey, your voicemail is full. And I said, I know. He goes, no, you got to empty that. And I said, no, because somebody else will leave a message. What a terrible way to, have a client servicing system. Yeah. And so, I found this book. My buddy gave me a book called First Things First by Stephen.
First Things First. First Things First.
Yep.
Yeah. And he gave it to me back in 95, and I was reading it there and I found, which was interesting, I found the time matrix management system. And I thought the guy invented it, but then I had a client that was at Annapolis back in the 70s and he said, no, they had us do it when we were in school. And so I created a tool called the time matrix to do, which is really just take everything you prioritize or all your tasks, prioritize those. And I just translated it into now, today, this week, or whenever. I still use it today, all day long. Get up every time, interrupted. So what I was doing, so that was one challenge, the time management. How did I have structure? Found something from How to Win Friends and Influence People. I took some information from that book, or maybe I think it was the book, How I Went from a Failure to a Success in Sales by Frank Benninger, something like that. And what I did is I created a tool called the bottom line list. So for 45 minutes, I was going to do one activity and then go to the next activity, take a 15-minute break. So my time management challenges kind of evolved into finding the solutions. Same thing happened with prospecting. What do I say? How do I say it? That kind of thing, which I was telling Suzanne before you came in here, Chris, eventually years later, taking a bunch of different tools and putting it all on one Excel spreadsheet called the Advisor's Edge. And I think I'm going to write a book around it eventually, because this thing gives you the edge of knowing exactly what to say when somebody says, well, let me think about it. You just click a button, find out exactly, go right down the first row, says objections, let me think about it, go right across, or first column, go right across the row, and you know exactly what the rebuttal is until it becomes second nature and you don't even need this tool anymore because it's all in your head. You know exactly what to do. And another thing that was a challenge starting up coaching and being in production was looking at the pipeline. See, a lot of advisors don't have a pipeline, or they don't have a written pipeline. It's in their head. Like, I got to call Joe Smith.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
I agree. Winging doesn't work. And right there, Chris and Suzanne, if you don't have a written pipeline, but also putting in categories of like stage 1, the initial contact, I got to call this person. I got to call her and set an appointment. Stage 2, the first appointment. I've got an appointment with her or him next week, and it's the getting to know you meeting. Stage 3, basically I've got all of the recommendations. Stage 4, and being able to look at that, and I color coded it, and being able to add the whole thing up, that column, it automatically adds itself to go, this is a good pipeline. It's a funnel where I've got X number of people here. Let's say there's 10, then there's 8, 7, 3, whatever it is. Stage 4 is referrals. That feeds the pipeline again. So what I started to do with prospecting is looking at it and going, what's the system for prospecting? And then sales. Like, what are the challenges with sales? What to say, how to say it, don't wing it, how to handle those objections, how to make better connections, how to ask better questions. But also, when I created this thing, and I was in production when I created this thing, and I didn't have a name for it, but now I call it the psychology of closing the second appointment. It's taking someone down a formula to come to a conclusion they want to buy. People hate to be sold, but they love to buy, and they will buy all day long if you ask the right questions and help them to come to a conclusion. Well, it sounds like what I need is this, this, and this. Well, that's exactly what I put together for you. Let me show you what I mean. Yeah. And so when you've got a combination of, those are only 3 of the 8 facets. When you got a combination of all of these solutions, what happened was, or is happening still, is that when I teach this stuff, Chris and Suzanne, people get success, but they got to want to get success. Some people don't. They're on a production plateau, and it is what it is.
But also, I think, once you systematize that from what you're saying, you also sensitize it. So people get a lot of that emotional resistance also goes by the wayside, right? You're measuring, you're getting in that mode of just follow the process, right?
Exactly. And Suzanne, it was years ago, that same guy that I told you about that created the Advisor's Edge, when I told him, put these objections on recipe cards. Chris, I was telling Suzanne before you came in, I had one of my clients I told him, put the objection on the front, the rebuttal on the back. It's a formula. I have an advisor, or I have insurance at work, or whatever it is. And he came back with that Excel spreadsheet, and we were able to role play that. Well, being able to do that, you get desensitized to hearing, I have an advisor. I know exactly what to say.
Sure.
But the same guy, Chris and Suzanne, that said to me, well, I think what's getting to me, and this was years ago, he said, hearing no. And I said, let's do an experiment. I'm going to desensitize you to no. So here it comes. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go. You're going to jump into what you're going to say in the first 60 seconds. I'm going to say not interested and hang up on you. And he said, what? And I said, 3, 2, 1, go. So he did it. And I said, not interested, click. I called the guy back and he's laughing. He goes, geez, that was quick. You got to give me a heads up. I said, okay, that's okay. Let's do it again. He did it again. I hung up on him 7 times. And by the 8th time, he's just belly laughing. And I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I know you're going to hang up on me. And I said, so does it hurt? And he said, no. And I said, well, I'm going to let you in a secret. Everybody's going to hang up on you. So make calls. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
All right.
So he was desensitized at that point, Chris and Suzanne. He didn't care. So, yeah.
So it's interesting. You're going through the process of reprogramming people.
Yeah.
And you're going through the process of reprogramming people so that they can become the best version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that what NAIFA does? So share with us a little bit about your commitment to education through leveraging NAIFA's platforms. Share with us a little bit about that. Okay. And then we'll jump into the speed round. And, it goes quick. Time goes super fast as we go through this. But share with us a little bit about that.
Okay. So at the very beginning, I was doing these free group coaching sessions. And it got to the point where I'd have to close the meeting. Like, we could only let 80 people in, and they would fill up within 2 hours. because I can't have 40 people. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Seriously, Chris. So, So what was happening was these people, so NAIFA would send it out, was kind enough to send it out. It was we did it for like 6 years. So NAIFA would send out an invitation to come to this, how to ask for referrals, how to, conquer rejection, whatever it was. So what was happening, Chris, is that I would have to make a follow-up call. Even though people click a button and say they're going to come to this thing, doesn't mean they're going to show up. Right. But if I called all 80 people the day before, and I'm just dialing the phone, most of the time leaving a message, 40 would show up. But 40 people on a call is a lot of people on a phone call. So what I would do is I would have the first dozen or so, I'd say, all right, make sure and I'd write their names down. Maybe it'd be 15 or more. And then I would say to them, okay, here's what we want to do. Everybody that I didn't say hello to, just go on mute, just so we don't have a dog in the background or a baby or whatever it is. Let's just, do this where it's streamlined, but you're going to get an audio. So Suzanne and I have talked about this. Your predecessors had these audios, but we're not sure where they are. So I'm going to send these back, and there's hours and hours of audio.
Right.
So that commitment to doing that, and that's where it was a win-win relationship in a sense that, I was getting a lot of NAIFA clients from that, which is great, At any rate, then it kind of morphed into writing blogs, speaking around the country, and basically being asked to be on different panels and doing, I think it was a diversification panel in Washington a couple of years ago, and facilitating that, and just being asked to do different things through NAIFA. And so I think NAIFA is a great organization. I think they are the advocate for the industry in Washington, bottom line. And I think NAIFA also serves another couple of different purposes. One of the other purposes is that, look, a lot of these people are on islands. Even though they work for XYZ company, they're not on the phone with XYZ friend that works at that company. So NAIFA is a platform for helping increase their skill sets. And then the third thing that I think is huge is the integrity and ethics. When you talk to a NAIFA member that's been a NAIFA member for a while, 5 years, 10 years, 2 decades, they're pretty proud of that. And they ask, hey, did you go to Las Vegas? Did you go to the national, conference in so-and-so? And they've been to all of these things. And it turns into a little family for them. Like they get a chance to see everybody that they haven't seen in a year when they go to the national, NAIFA conferences. So
absolutely, it is a like-minded thinking individuals collectively coming together to uplift each other. So that is wonderful. You kind of laid right into
perfect
our tagline there, Suzanne. Like, who even knew, right? So with that being said, Suzanne, do you have anything before we go to the lightning round?
Let's go to the lightning round. Dan can handle it.
What's the lightning? I don't even know what the lightning round is. What is it?
All right, so Dan, the lightning round is basically, it's like you're on the hot seat. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'm not going to ask you your political affiliation or your religious affiliation. I'm just going to simply ask you or not what you were doing when you were 18 years old and you didn't want to tell your parents about. I'm going to ask you questions that I know you know the answer to. And the goal is that people probably know of you. They don't know you. The goal is to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
And it makes the human part of what we do, people really connect to that. So with that being said, are you ready to go?
Let's do it. Let's jump in. I'm ready.
All right, Dan. So something really easy. When you were growing up as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Wow. A police officer until I was at a party when I was 14 years old and got caught there by the cops. And I thought, I don't want to chase kids through the woods at about 2:30 in the morning, because I'm from a small town, and I'm sure police officers do a lot more than chase kids through the woods at 2:30 in the morning. Yeah. If
the people you coach had to describe you in one word, how would they describe you?
Wow, energetic, I would say. Like he's going to jump in, he's going to get me motivated, and let's do this. Yeah.
Okay. If you could have dinner with anybody in history, go back in history, whether they're living or they passed on. Who would it be and why?
Wow. Tough question. 2 possible answers. One, my father, who just passed away in November from stage 4 cancer. I'd love to sit down and have dinner with him one last time until I see him again. Yeah. Or Jesus Christ. I think having dinner with Jesus would be a game changer forever for me. Not that I'm going into the whole religious thing or anything like that, but total game changer. So.
If I was joining NAIFA today, what advice would you give an advisor today, knowing that the industry is evolving and changing so fast?
Okay. Do not stick your toe in the water. Dive into the pool. Dive into the deep end. Learn everything you can. In fact, I listened to John Wheeler's podcast from, I think it was October 4th. I listened to it before we jumped into this, about an hour before, and he was right. John is 100% right. You can't be half in. He didn't say that, but that's what he meant. Learn from everyone. Learn from everyone. And also the other thing would be a friend. When you get in here, you're gonna form friendships. When I would speak at national NAIFA conferences, I would leave there knowing there were people than when I got there. And I would say that you want friends in this industry, not so much that you have to get anything from it, but to give things to them and give them your advice as well and your camaraderie and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Dan, you are a friend. Dan, is there anything you would like to share with our NAIFA audience before we wrap up?
Yeah. Two things. One, winging it doesn't work. Don't wing it anymore, because you will never get from here to here by winging it. No way. And the second thing is, it comes down to this. Any challenge that you've ever had, any challenge you're having, and any challenge that you will have, know this: there's always a solution. There's always a solution. And, I'm telling you right now, and it doesn't have to be with me, find somebody to help you get the solution so that you don't have that challenge anymore. And yep.
All right, Dan, it's me and you. Looks like Suzanne had some technical difficulties, but that's okay. I will close us off. So Dan, thank you so much for your time. We are forever better because you are a coach and coaching the best and helping people become the best version of themselves. So those out there who are listening to Dan, you know where to find him. Dan, would you just really quickly tell us where to find you?
Absolutely. There's a couple of different ways. I've got a podcast as well, if you don't mind me throwing that out there. It's called the Advisor Solutions Podcast. And I've got people in 20 different countries listen to it. So give it a listen, the Advisor Solutions Podcast. The second way, you can always pick up one of my books. Just go to Amazon and put Daniel C. Finley, and you'll see both books in there. Just published a book literally last week, my second book. These are thick. They're 400 plus pages, but you'll find solutions in there. The third way, email me. Email me at dan@advisorsolutionsinc.com. And
awesome.
Up a free session. So, Chris, thank you. This has been fun. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So the takeaway today, everyone, is very simple: is you can become a better version of yourself. You got to jump in the pool and become better. Thank you for tuning in to today's Advisor Today podcast with Mr. Dan. Dan, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Listen, even the best players in the world always had a coach.
Yep.
And so consider Dan as a part of your coaching enterprise to help him uplift and promote your game. And again, thank you for tuning in to Advisor Today's podcast, where we promote, uplift, and make you as an advisor better for the collective good of your clients. And we all grow together. We'll see you next week, same time. Thanks for tuning in to Advisor Today's podcast. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series. Make sure to subscribe to get future episodes. And if you're interested in coming on the show, let us know.